Welcome to Fly on the Wall podcast. I'm your host, Chris Sonksen, CEO and founder of Church Boom. Here you get to sit in on a live coaching session as I coach pastors through the ministry challenges we all face. If you find this podcast helpful, please make sure to like, subscribe, and share. Welcome to today's podcast, talking with my good friend Josh from Arizona, and we're talking about how do you keep your team healthy. That's part of the job as a leader, is to make sure that they stay balanced and healthy. And because if they're not, then they face burnout and they face other issues, and then your team starts to weaken. And so it's important as a leader to know how to keep them healthy and moving forward. And we're going to be talking about that with my good friend Josh. Before we jump into that, make sure you check out churchboom.org for all things Church Boom. And if you've ever thought about being a coach, go to coaching certification at churchboom.org. We've created an entire program that will help you know how to coach other pastors. It could be a second income for you, or it could be a second chapter for your life. So make sure you check out churchboom.org and make sure you check out the coaching certification program that we have. But let's jump into the conversation now. Let's jump into it, man. How can I serve you today?
Yeah, man. One of the things, I'm trying to balance is, as a church that's, we're doing a construction project. We're portable right now as we're getting into our building. We're not a big staff team. We have a lot of volunteer leaders, things like that. I'm trying to balance how we push and seek excellence and achieve great things while also not burning everybody out. That's probably my number one right now. I want everyone to really reach that next level of leadership that I think they're capable of, but I don't want them to quit before they get there.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. So you feel like that's happening now?
No, I don't think people are necessarily burned out. I just, you see those signs of okay, people are tired. We've been portable for about a year. So there's some kind of getting to a year. I've noticed just not weariness, but a sense of okay, I have to encourage rest, but we also have to get the job done. And so, how do I institute those margins ahead of time so they don't kind of force themselves on us is what I'm just trying to anticipate. No one's I'm out of here. But, you can just feel that sense of wow, we've been portable for a while.
Right.
You will feel that.
Yeah. Well, there's a couple things. I mean, I definitely can relate to being portable with all of our campuses. There's always one that's portable. So I feel like I've lived in the portable season for the last 18 years because there's always something going on. Couple things. They're just really practical things. One is I do think it's important, and I do think we have a responsibility as leaders to guard people's time off. Mm-hmm. You get people that are addicted to work and addicted to busy, especially addicted to busy. Yeah. They equate productivity and busyness, when in reality, sometimes busyness is not exactly productive. They're two different things. And people, I think, equate those as the same. The busier they are, the more productive they feel like they're being. When in reality, they're not being all that productive. They're just being really busy because they get addicted to busy. Sure. So I think you have to guard their time, make sure that they are taking time off, make sure that you're not allowing them to get addicted to busy, correcting them if they get addicted to busy, make sure that they don't live in that stage. And, I remember times where in building projects, times where I had to come in and turn the office lights off and tell this guy to go home. You got to go home, dude. Yeah. It's 5:45. You got to go home. I'm here late but it's my first time being here late because of whatever. You got to go home. Yeah. And I think that people do get addicted to busy. I think they also get addicted to busy because it's where they find their identity and it's where they find their worth. And that can get unhealthy. I'm not saying that that's happening. Obviously, you're trying to do preventative maintenance, but that I think is really an important part. I think you have to speak it. They need to hear it from you because it conveys proper rest. It conveys avoiding burnout, but it also conveys your heart. Yeah. And I think that's important. The other thing is, I remember one time we were doing portable for a long time with this church, with this certain campus, and we just decided we wanted to pull the staff back from setting up and tearing down, and we took money from our budget, and we put 5 people in charge of setting everything up. and we paid them every Sunday.
Okay.
That was crazy to be like, but it was like this is killing the staff. So I went and said, you five, we're going to pay you. You staff, don't show up till this time. You don't set up, you don't tear down. And so when we took out the setting up and the tearing down, they could no longer say they're a portable church, because the reality is they just showed up to church, did their ministry, and left. Yeah. They are not doing the work of a portable church, and that changed everything really fast.
Sure.
That was out of more of a Hail Mary, because it was like, I could, it was getting bad. I was like, all right, well, we're just, okay, if I pay these people X amount of dollars, I think we found $20,000 over the next 8 months to pay these guys. And I was like, you 5 or 6, do it. Okay. That was, again, I'm not saying you're there, but just something to consider, because you don't want to get there.
Sure. Yeah. And that's like the hardest spot to staff, like volunteers, especially here. Like, we just got done with the summer. We have a big meeting coming up where we're kind of re-upping, because nobody wants to set up and tear down in Phoenix in the summer. So that team was a skeleton crew.
Yeah.
How do you encourage? Because like every staff member is different. Then is it more one-on-one when you're like connecting with somebody? Because like I have people that are really good at they're good at taking rest and putting that margin, and people that like I tell them to go home and they still don't go home. I'm like, go literally. What do I have to do? So
right.
Is it a blanket thing, or is it more just you're kind of going off as you meet with them and see where they are? How do you gauge that? Okay.
Both, and here's why I say both. Both is because, one, I would want the staff. I know your heart. You have an amazing heart. I want the staff to feel your heart. I want your leaders to feel like, this guy's telling us all. He's conveying his heart. He's conveying balance. He's conveying that family's important. He's conveying a lot. And I wouldn't want anybody that may not need that one-on-one correction from you to internally process. Man, it's just like everybody's working around here. I mean, I'm balanced because I'll put my foot down, but I don't like the way that everybody else is working, and they may not know that you're privately telling them not to work, and so they're just going to convey it as, this guy's a slave driver and he's not really working really hard, or not really wanting everybody to work really hard. Yeah. I think you got to tell everybody so it conveys your heart, and then I think you got to deal with the one-on-one whenever necessary. That's the way that I would handle it. And if you end up, by the way, we paid 5 guys a little bit of money to each of them. One time I paid a staff member who was part-time. I gave him X amount of dollars more per week. And I said, dude, you're a volunteer king. Get the job done. Get your 8 volunteers, get them done. Here's $500 more a week. Here's $400 more a week. Sure. It was awesome for him. He was a volunteer king, but the rest of the staff didn't have to worry about it. So I'm just adding that on as a possible. But back to the thing, I think they need to hear you up front, Josh, because they need to hear your heart. Yeah. And one-on-one when necessary. But I do both, because they need to know your heart. Otherwise, if they don't hear your heart, they're going to come to their own conclusion.
Yeah, that's a good point. Yeah, what are some of the things when you're looking at staff? I know you guys made that call. What are some of those telltale signs that you would say, hey, this, because some of that stuff is just under the surface. People are so faithful. Yeah. Like, especially like church planning crew, everyone's real faithful, and then they're like done. There's no like middle ground. Yeah. So what are there a couple like kind of telltale signs where you'd say, hey, look for this?
Yep. Yes, there is a few. One is I always watch the reaction of the spouse. The spouse won't hold back. You just watch. Hey, wait, we got this still to do, and look over at the spouse, and you watch the spouse. You listen for potential tension in the marriage. And again, I think a lot of it comes in the one, hey, you need to be honest. You need to be honest with me. If you're not being honest with me, you're going to hurt your marriage. You're going to hurt whatever. So again, the forward, upfront conversations, but I think you got to watch the tension in the marriage. I think you have to watch the spouse's reaction. I know that sounds a little weird, but
it makes sense.
The spouse will always give most time the spouse will give the reaction of what's really happening. Sure. And you got to pay attention to that, because that might be happening. And they're just like, we're servants. We're going to do this. And, old Jeremy's going to do it, and he's great. And he's a great guy. But it's like, but he's burning out,
Yeah.
and he's not helping his marriage. And if you listen to the wife or the husband or whoever the situation is,
Yeah.
you'll get the truth. You always get the truth from the other one.
Sure. Yeah. Yeah. That is something I have learned. Yeah.
They'll tell you.
Yeah. Yeah. Or they'll tell someone.
Exactly. Most of the
Yeah.
time, they'll tell someone.
Yeah. For
That's a
sure.
good point. That's a good point.
I'll hear
Yeah. What
that.
else you got, man?
Kind of on that same lines, I know you guys have done portable really successfully. I'm trying to find ways, obviously, we're involved in our community, different things, but trying to find ways to increase our visibility in our community.
Yep.
You don't have that permanent kind of fixture,
Mm-hmm.
so I was curious, how could we increase our visibility in our community?
Well, you and I have talked about this before, and you guys have done these kind of things before. The whole love where you live, love
Yeah.
the whatever the area code is. I think whether a church has a permanent location or doesn't have a permanent location, I think that either one doesn't guarantee a mark in the community.
Sure.
I mean, how many churches do you know that, man, they've been on that corner for the last 85 years and no one knows they exist? And, if that thing became a Rite Aid, they'd drive by and go, wasn't that a church? Maybe, I don't know. I can't remember. They don't even remember. So I don't think location, and I would encourage you to communicate that to your team, I don't think location guarantees impact or noticeability.
Sure.
And sometimes a team member or you or a team member might feel like, we can't be as impactful because we don't have a location. It's like, dude, I know a lot of churches on a lot of corners that have zero impact, zero influence. No one even knows that they're open. And they got a permanent location, though. So that doesn't guarantee it.
Sure. Yeah.
What guarantees it is, are we serving the community?
Yeah.
Does the principal feel like they're being served? Does the superintendent of schools feel like they're being served? Do the police feel like they're being served? Does the fire, this, that, whatever, the Parks and Rec, do they feel like they're being served? And if you're doing those already, great. But if you're not, go back to those, man. We do 4 Serve Saturdays a year. We do, one every other month. We get 15 people and we go do 2 major projects. I think for me personally, I go back to that, although you and I have talked about it before, because I don't know any other way to serve. And I think that it allows you, and you and I have talked about this, especially in my book, Indispensable Church, to pastor the church and also pastor the city. Yeah. So I'll give you an example. I was working with a guy out in Ohio. I think he's got, 1,800 people in his church. The town has 9,000 people, 10,000 people. And it was funny. I was doing some coaching with the guy, and he's like, hey, man, he goes, I was talking to the mayor. I go, well, first of all, you need to realize you're the mayor. And he goes, well, I'm not the mayor. I go, yes, you are. I go, dude, one out of every 7 people in this city go to your church. You're the mayor. You're not the mayor by title, but you're the mayor. Yeah, but it's not only the size of the church, bro. It's like the schools, they own them. Yeah. The homeless thing going on in the community, they own it. The men's addiction home, they provide a service every Friday. I mean, they own that city. It's not just the size. They own that city. And then I think of another church in Southern California who, in my opinion, was owning that community, that little suburb. And they just got their first permanent location just a while back. They were meeting at a high school, and then it went from 300 to 500 to 1,000. They were killing it, but they own that city or that suburb, if you will, because they served it. Yeah. And to me, that's how you own it. I don't think a building does it. I think what you do Monday through Saturday is what does it.
Yeah. 100%.
You can own it. Anybody can own it.
Sure.
And I think you can map out a certain area and say there's 4 schools, there's 3 nonprofits, there's this, there's that. We're going to own it.
Yeah, that's good.
That's how you do it. And you can own it. Because you know why else you can own it? Because most pastors won't do the legwork to own it. It's a
Sure.
lot of work to own
Yeah.
it.
Yeah.
Uh, I don't think it's magic,
No.
but the other thing that is quasi sad is there's no competition in that space.
Yeah.
Like, oh, we're a cool church. We have 2 screens and the pastor looks cool. Yeah, there's 500 other churches that, where the worship guy's got skinny jeans and there's 3 screens and all, whatever. Cement floor, not carpet, like the whole cool
Yeah.
vibe and all that. It's like, yeah, you blend into the other 500 churches.
Sure.
Serve the community and you'll
Yeah.
actually stand out because no one's doing that.
Yeah.
It's
Yeah,
crazy.
I found that to be true.
Oh, yeah.
I-
Yeah. No competition in that space, which is sad.
Yeah.
Because I think if Jesus was here and running a church, I think that's exactly what he'd be doing.
Yeah.
So at least it's my opinion,
Yeah.
Yeah. Anyway,
Yeah.
I don't
Yeah.
know if that helps.
No, it's great. Yeah. We have outreaches. We have our Love the Block thing we've talked about, and like we're really involved in the schools, and we have found that like we're the only ones in there doing those things, and we are seeing the fruit of that. People getting saved, people come to the church.
Yeah.
So it's hard in a new city, in a new place, to be patient with that work because we
Right.
had such a reputation kind of where we were, and then it's almost like restarting.
Yeah, of
One of
course.
the hardest parts is like a deep desire, I don't know, at least in my heart, for more and like to win more people and to
Yeah.
build more, and
Right.
but also like trying to be patient with where
Mhm.
we are, and I don't know, celebrate every win.
Yeah.
I think I'm chronically bad at looking ahead and being like, more, let's go, more, faster, more.
Yeah.
And it's like, all right, but just like rejoicing in what God's doing
Sure.
all the time in his presence. So
Well, I think you tagged on to something really good there, Josh, because I think a lot of people that listen to this, pastors, probably struggle with that too. Like, we don't slow down enough to celebrate. We have to slow down to celebrate. We have to not just go to the next big thing. We have to celebrate. The people need it. You've heard me say before, volunteers don't get paid money, they get paid fruit. Fruit being the result and the production of their work. So if we don't slow down long enough to go, man, I want to point out these 5 things that have happened or these 3 celebrations, and that's possible because of this. If we don't do that, if we don't point out the fruit, then volunteers are working for free, and no one wants to work for free. They get paid by fruit.
it's good.
And and it's our job to point out the fruit. If we don't point out the fruit, then they're not getting paid.
Yeah.
And
That's good.
so you got to point out the fruit or they're not getting paid. And then it's like, oh, my volunteers not staying around. Of course they're not. They're not getting paid. Fruit.
Yeah.
Fruit.
Oh,
They
that's good.
have to hear the fruit every week. and literally, not just in your little huddles on Sunday morning. I think personally, try to do it maybe a couple times a month in the middle of the week. Wednesday, Thursday,
Sure.
you do a little, 90 seconds with Josh kind of a thing. It's like, hey guys, just wanted to give you a shout out in the middle of the week. All of you are serving. I just got off the phone. This person gave their life to Christ. This person, whatever. This person got back, whatever. 90 seconds or less. Just want to
That's a
let
great
you know,
idea.
man, that
Yeah.
that story that I just heard that's jacking me all up and getting me excited is only possible because of you guys. Figure
That's so
out
good.
different ways, delivery systems to communicate fruit. And you have less likely your team will burn out.
I like that. Yeah, because those stories are there. You just
Well, yeah.
you always are like, this is great. Let's go. Let's let's
Yeah.
keep piling it on. It's like, oh wait, no, we should celebrate. Like this person got invited in just right off the street, gave their life to the
Right.
Lord, like came to party
Yeah.
with the pastor, discover whatever people call their thing. It's like
Yep.
that's exciting. Like they're
Yeah.
gonna serve next week. It's like oh shoot, that's cool. But then it's like we just kind of keep going,
Yeah.
Going
Well,
next week.
one, you're an entrepreneur guy. You want to keep going. 2, you hear the wins all the time. You don't need to be motivated by them.
Sure.
But the average guy that's an usher at your church on the 1st and 3rd Sunday of the month that doesn't think about Banner Church a lot like you do, if he doesn't hear those wins, he doesn't know they're there.
Yeah.
You got to make sure. So I would, if I were you, I would think about your delivery system and then commit to that cadence.
Okay.
Hey, every other Wednesday, I do a video and send it to all the volunteers.
Sure.
Okay? There's a system. Figure out 2 or 3 ways that you can deliver fruit and celebration, delivery systems, and then just follow it. So you just not in your calendar, every other week or every Wednesday or every other Wednesday or every other Thursday. It just shows up in your calendar. Send video to volunteer team. And okay, what's happened in the last 3 days? Okay, that happened. Boom, you make the video.
Yeah.
And bro, I'm telling you, you come up with a couple of delivery systems because I think we all have good intentions. Yeah, we need to stop and celebrate. We need to do this. And then 6 months goes by and like, I haven't done that in 4 months. Because if I don't build it into my calendar, it's just not going to happen.
Yeah. Yeah.
So build your delivery system into your calendar.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
I wrote that down.
Yep.
That's good.
Yeah, no, that's awesome. What else you got?
Kind of speaking of leaders and disciples and stuff, what kind of stuff have you seen churches doing to raise up, healthy leaders, disciples, anything new that people are kind of getting legs with?
Yeah. I would say I've seen a little bit more in the leadership than I have seen in the discipleship. That's unfortunate. I do think that, I've seen some churches really win in their small groups, and it feels like that's going well. They put a lot of emphasis there. I don't honestly see anything where I'm like, man, that's new, and man, that's amazing. The leadership circles that you and I have talked about more than once, I've seen that really work for a combination of those two things.
Okay.
So there's a church that one of our executive coaches is working with in, Pennsylvania or somewhere. And a church runs maybe 1,000. And they got 15, 20 circles going, and they just keep expanding. Well, what's happening is they're going through leadership books and learning, but birthed out of that is this natural discipleship that's also taking place because it's relational and everything moves at the speed of relationships. And so I haven't seen anything new.
Okay.
What I have seen is people being consistent with what works.
Sure.
And that's why I'm a big fan of the circles, because discipleship and leadership are happening together at the same time, because it happens in the circle. So if I'm leading a circle, I'm like, man, that guy could be a future leader. That guy could be a future leader, because I'm always looking for the next leader. But birthed inside of that is, okay, let's close in prayer together. What's going on in your life? What's God doing? Like discipleship organically happens in those settings. But I don't think anybody's doing anything new. Again, I think they're being consistent with what works. And I think that's where the problem comes from, because people ask me, they're like, actually I asked my personal coach. I've had the same two coaches over 10 years. He's like, dude, we still do circles because leadership and discipleship happens in both of them. And his church runs 10,000, and he's got 4,000 people in circles. Leadership, so they're raising up this army of leaders at the same time discipleship's organically happening. He literally kind of got on my case a little bit. He goes, you keep asking me, what else are you doing? I'm doing the same thing that works, but I'm being consistent. Be consistent, and it'll pay off. Good. And I would say to anybody that's listening, and you as well, it's like, find that thing. I love those because it gives you leadership, sifting and sorting for the next leader, but it also organically gives you discipleship. It just happens in there. If you get enough of your staff doing it, and it starts spreading out.
Sure.
So, but it's a matter of doing what works consistently, which, that statement, everything you want is waiting for the other side of consistency.
Sure.
Save money. Consistently, if you do it, it'll work. Eat right. Yeah. Well, consistently, if you do it, it'll work. Sure. Same thing with this. Leadership circles. Sure. Well, if you consistently do it, it'll work. And I think that's the key. I think we pull the gas pedal off, and if we keep it on the thing that works, it'll pay off.
Oh, that's so good.
Yeah.
That's good.
So, anything else?
What are you on time?
If you got one more question, fire away if you do. Yeah, if you don't, that's okay.
You can be quick on this one, but we can talk about this. Is more just personal.
Yeah.
I think I mentioned to you a couple times about working on a manuscript for a book and things like that. So I've been in that world where I finished the manuscript, and I sent it to a couple beta readers to get some initial feedback. It's not copy editing or anything like that. But what would you recommend as far as just general processes for pastors who are writing a book?
Hmm.
I know there's a lot of ways you could go with being self-published or working with a publisher, things like that. Do you have, obviously you've written a lot of great books and they've been successful. What would be some of your suggestions kind of early on in that journey that you think would help push something in the right way?
Yeah. Um, First, I think that if we're talking about after the manuscript is done, and it sounds like the manuscript's done.
Yeah, it's done.
Okay,
Yeah, the pitch deck, that whole thing. It's
it's all done. Okay,
yeah, yeah,
so now we're looking at I think a couple things that you have to consider, and let me back up even farther. I think the publishing industry is changing, and
sure.
it is. I mean, I was talking with Mark Cole. He's the president for John Maxwell, and also now the owner of the John Maxwell Company, and he's the same thing. He's like, dude, this is changing, because social media changed it, the ability to get it out changes it, whatever. So one, I think it's changing. Two is I do think a person has to have in mind what their objective is.
Sure.
So is the objective just to get the book out? Is the objective that for like my recent book, Traction, that came out a handful of months ago, that was actually coupled with a coaching certification. So it was a book you could buy, but it also worked in a coaching certification program that we have. So I found a dual role with it.
Sure.
So I think that a person has to really know whether or not they are what they're wanting to do with it. Is it just selling it, or is it like, no, I see it more of a home group, small group. I see it more of a this. I could see it expanding in this. I could see it helping to sell this way. I think someone has to get really clear on that. I
Okay.
think being published is not as great as it always sounds, because at the end of the day, you're the one that's going to be responsible for selling those books. Um,
Sure.
and I don't think it's as great as people, it sounds. So, for instance, I was published. My last 4 or 5 books was published with Baker.
Okay.
First 2 were self-published. Then I went 4 or 5 whatever books with Baker.
Okay.
My last book, I moved over to Avail. Avail is Sam Chan's and a guy named
Yeah.
Martine. Martine's a really good friend of mine, and so is Sam. He's my coach. They own Avail. They have a publishing. Well, it's published, but you never lose the ownership.
Mm.
So and
Oh,
then so now I get to publish it, but I also get to own it. So Traction, my book, was able to be a coaching certification program, which would have most likely never happened with a traditional publisher, because they own the manuscript. When they
yeah.
buy it from you, they own it. It's like buying your car and then you give them a pink slip. If the guy wants to paint it yellow, it doesn't matter. You don't own the car anymore. Same
Sure.
thing with the manuscript. It's like, that's my manuscript. No, not really. Actually, someone else owns it. So in this case, I went a different direction because I wanted to publish it, but I wanted to own it because I needed it to have multiple functions. And I
Yeah.
think knowing what you want will determine which direction you want to go.
Yeah.
So tell me, just like in 45 seconds or less, tell me what you want. What's the direction of your book? Like, where do you want it to go?
Yeah, I mean, initially I had written it for my church to help them redefine the metaphor of what it means to follow Christ, to deepen their faith,
Yep.
because I found that it was very surface level, very fear based relationships with Christ.
Yep.
But as I started to share it out, a lot of people were very interested. And so I thought, as a general idea, as a ministry that kind of goes even beyond my church, to help specifically churches in my area and pastors in leading their church through. And I formulated it in a way in which it could be walked through by a small group to help, fellow believers
Yeah.
and pastors to help their churches
Right.
kind of rethink the way in which they're approaching Christ
Right.
to deepen their faith.
I
So
love it.
there's a sense where it's not necessarily a broad market where I'm trying to, get on a speaking tour or inject my way into necessarily an industry by any means. It's concurrent with the industry I'm already in, but it would be something broader where I'd like to get it into the hands of pastors so that if they're looking for a resource to help their
Yeah.
people go deeper, specifically in key areas of discipleship, things like prayer, things like rest, that they'd feel equipped for that. So, equipping people to have healthy relationships with Christ is kind of my thing. So
Yep. Yep.
the audience
So
expanded on me from just like, I'm going to put it
yeah.
on Amazon. So like, well, maybe I should think about,
Yeah. Yeah. Well, and again, I think there's creative ways to say, okay, now this is, more of a business process, but it's like, okay, here's a book. You mentioned small groups. Okay, so how does that work? Could it be a small group book that is accompanied with some videos? Is it that they buy the book, the videos are free? Is it they only pay for, postage, and then they buy more books, and like is it a full campaign for a church? Like there's multiple ways to take a book like what you're talking about, which I'm sure is an amazing book because you have an amazing sort of discipleship heart, is figuring out the strategy of what you want to do. Now, if you're going to use it in multiple venues, I think you got to either self-publish or go into a hybrid of both. Okay. And we can talk more about that offline, but that's the way that I'd be thinking, because I think that you have a lot of different angles you could go at it.
Sure.
And I don't know if traditional would be the best way for you.
Okay. Yeah, I'm noticing pastors and even just industry leaders that I really respect are providing courses to go along with their book. So you buy the book and then they send the course to go along with that. I think that's edifying, and also, it's financially beneficial if you're selling a course as well. So I like the data tracking of selling it myself, having the data, being able, even if I sell it free plus shipping or something, and then send that course along with it.
Yeah. Absolutely. So we can talk more about it offline if I can help you, but that's my initial thoughts on that. So
thank you. Cool, dude. One.
No worries, man. Always good to see you, dude. And anything you need, anything you or your wife, whatever needs, Barry or anything, just let me know, dude. Just reach out. Always here to help, man.
Awesome, man. Thank you.
All right, dude. Good talking with you, man.
Yeah.
All right. See ya. Hey, I hope you enjoyed today's conversation with my good buddy Josh from Arizona. And what a topic we talked about, and so important for us as leaders. Don't forget to check out churchboom.org. And as I mentioned at the beginning, coaching certifications. If you've ever thought about being a coach, we've got an amazing program for you. So make sure you check that out at churchboom.org. We'll see you next time.